wake up, and before your feet even touch the floor, your brain is already running a list. Emails to answer, meetings to sit through, errands to squeeze in before the day ends. Somewhere in the back of your mind, a quiet voice is already counting down the hours until you're allowed to stop. Now picture a different morning. Same sunrise, same human body, same brain, but no list, no meetings, no emails, no clock on the wall deciding when you're allowed to rest. For about 95% of the time our species has existed on this planet, that second morning was the only kind of morning anyone had ever known. So what did people actually do with all that time? Because here's the strange part. Jobs, careers, the 9 to 5, the entire idea of going to work, none of that existed for most of human history, and yet humans survived. Thrived, raised children, built tools, painted on cave walls, and somehow filled every single day for hundreds of thousands of years without a single job posting. So where did all that time go? So what filled the gap? This is where it gets interesting, because the answer isn't nothing. It's almost the opposite of nothing. But here's the thing. This kind of work didn't feel like a job, because there was no boss checking on you, no deadline, no performance review. You worked on your spear when you felt like working on your spear. If you wanted to stop halfway through to talk, you stopped. If you wanted to take 3 days to finish something, you took 3 days. The work expanded and contracted around the day, instead of the day being built around the work. Now let's talk about something that almost never makes it into the popular picture of prehistoric life. Building things that had absolutely nothing to do with survival. In southeastern Turkey, there's a site called Göbekli Tepe. It dates back roughly 11,000 years, which puts it before large-scale farming had really taken hold in that region. And what's there isn't a village, or a granary, or a defensive wall. It's a series of massive carved stone pillars, some weighing many tons, arranged in circular enclosures, decorated with images of animals. To move and shape stones like that, you need a huge number of people working together for a long time on something that produces zero food, zero shelter, and zero immediate survival benefit. People who supposedly had no spare time somehow found enough of it, collectively, to drag multi-ton stones across a landscape and carve them into art. That's not a society scraping by hour to hour. That's a society with time to burn on something that mattered to them for reasons that had nothing to do with hunger. And it wasn't just monuments. Across Africa, Europe, and Australia, archaeologists keep finding the same pattern repeating in miniature. Small bone and ivory carvings shaped into animals and human figures, beads strung from shells, teeth, and seeds, painted rock shelters that were returned to again and again over generations, with new images layered on top of old ones. In parts of Australia, some rock art sites show evidence of being maintained and repainted across what may be thousands of years, almost like a living gallery passed down through countless lifetimes. None of this kept anyone fed. All of it took time, and people kept doing it anyway, generation after generation, which tells you something about how much spare time they actually had. Then there's play. Not just children playing, although that mattered too, but adults playing as well. Small carved objects that look suspiciously like gaming pieces. Smoothed animal ankle bones used the way we'd use dice show up at archaeological sites going back further than most people assume. Games of chance and skill, played with simple objects, pass the time the same way a deck of cards or a board game does today. Somebody, somewhere, 10,000 years before written history, was almost certainly losing badly at some kind of game and complaining about it to their friends. And then there's the part of the day that modern people would find almost uncomfortable, doing absolutely nothing, on purpose, without guilt. Sleep deserves a mention too, because it gets misunderstood a lot. There's a popular idea that ancient humans slept in 2 separate blocks every single night, with an hour or 2 of wakefulness in between. And there's some historical evidence for that pattern showing up in certain places at certain times. But when researchers actually studied sleep among hunter-gatherer and forager-horticulturalist groups in Africa and South America, using actual sleep-tracking devices instead of just written records, what they found was a bit more ordinary than the legend suggests. People in these groups generally slept in one continuous block, somewhere around 6.5 to 7 hours a night, went to bed a few hours after sunset, and woke up before sunrise. No alarm clocks, no electric lights, and yet their bodies landed on something pretty close to what sleep doctors today would call healthy. The takeaway isn't that ancient sleep was bizarre, it's that modern sleep, squeezed into late nights of screen time and early alarms, is the part that's actually unusual. Ritual and ceremony filled hours, too, sometimes entire days. Among groups like the San in southern Africa, communal dances that could stretch long into the night, involving most of the camp, served as healing rituals, social bonding, and spiritual practice all at once. These weren't quick 5-minute affairs. People would dance for hours, sometimes until exhaustion, in events that pulled the entire community together around a single shared activity. Try to imagine the modern equivalent. Not a concert you bought a ticket to and left after 2 hours. An all-night event that the whole town attends, that nobody gets paid to organize, and that everyone considers completely normal. So if you stitch all of this together, a typical day starts to look less like a desperate scramble for survival and more like a strange mix of chores, crafts, games, gossip, art, and ceremony, woven loosely around a few hours of actual subsistence work, food gathering or hunting in the morning or whenever it made sense, tool repair and maintenance scattered throughout, long stretches of social time, children playing in mixed age groups, learning by watching the adults rather than being taught in a classroom, evenings built around fire, food, and stories, and sleep that came when the body wanted it, not when a schedule demanded it. Then, starting around 10 to 12,000 years ago, agriculture began to spread, and slowly, almost invisibly at first, the shape of the day started to change. Crops needed tending on a schedule the weather dictated, not a schedule humans chose. Storage needed defending, surpluses needed managing, which eventually meant someone had to manage them, which eventually meant some people worked while others organized that work. Step by step, across thousands of years, the open, self-directed day got carved up into blocks, assigned to tasks, assigned to other people's needs. The job, as a concept, was being built piece by piece, long before anyone had a word for it. And here's the part worth sitting with. For roughly 300,000 years, the human brain developed, adapted, and settled into its current form inside that first kind of day, the one with no schedule, the one where work expanded and contracted with your mood, your energy, and the needs of the people around you, not with a clock on a wall or a notification on a screen. Every instinct you have about rest, about boredom, about wanting to talk to people for no productive reason, about wanting to make something just because it looks nice, all of that was shaped inside that ancient, unstructured day. The 9 to 5 isn't ancient. It isn't even old on the timescale your body actually understands. It's a tiny, recent experiment, layered on top of a brain that spent nearly its entire existence with no boss, no deadline, and no list waiting for it the moment it woke up. So the next time you catch yourself feeling guilty for sitting still, for doing nothing in particular, for spending an hour just talking to someone with no goal in mind, remember this: that feeling of guilt is new. The sitting still, the talking, the doing nothing in particular, that's the original program. That's what a human day was supposed to look like for almost the entire history of our species.